than 100 years since the inauguration of this building, the OAS headquarters, our institution still brings together the peoples of the Americas to address our responsibilities as a partnership of nations. As we look to the future, our work must also focus on the construction of a positive agenda that continues to favorably impact millions of lives every day.
SETI's results for 2018 proves our effectiveness as a development partner, placing people at the center of our work and leveraging partnerships and cooperation to transform policy imperatives into action. With an eye on the rapidly changing global context, SETI is innovating to constructively address the emerging challenges and opportunities for the region. As part of our competitiveness program, SETI is designing precise tools to assess assets and capabilities in the productive sector to determine paths towards higher value goods and services. As our flagship program for partnerships, the Americas Competitiveness Exchange on Innovation and Entrepreneurship, the OAS, will continue to leverage good practices and the power of networks to increase trade and investment in the region.
For us, the role of the OAS is very important, connecting countries, connecting governments and private sector, and letting us know what other countries are doing it and how we can replicate that in our countries to enhance development.
For me, who has come here to look at how can we develop our own ecosystem, our own innovation hubs, our own accelerators, I think seeing this, touching, feeling, seeing the transformation, seeing how quickly you made it happen is a testament to what is possible. So I believe all of us leave here stronger than ever.
The Working Group of Experts on Subnational Competitiveness, the GTEX, is our gateway program to promote local economic competitiveness policies alongside municipal and state-level governments, together with the private sector and academia.
Este tipo de reuniones te sirven para darte cuenta de todo lo que se está viviendo en América Latina sobre los temas de competitividad. Y hoy justamente en este sector estamos viendo sobre todo los temas de innovación tecnológica. Pues que si hablamos de competitividad tenemos que hablar de tecnología. Y me está ayudando mucho para ver el panorama de ver lo que están haciendo otras ciudades y lo que podemos llegar a aplicar también nosotros en México.
The hub on the transfer and commercialization of technology is connecting and strengthening national innovation ecosystems in the region. Each edition of the hub trains budding technology entrepreneurs from the region's public and private sectors to take promising products and services from idea to market.
Porque es importante que estemos juntos en esto, porque la región tiene que estar unida y me parece que hay mucho conocimiento en la región que todavía no está explotado comercialmente como podría ser, y esta es la mejor manera de hacerlo.
Tenemos la proyección de cada año generar y compartir nuevas experiencias entre aquellos que contribuyen a la innovación, Queremos cambiar el cómo lo hemos estado haciendo en Latinoamérica. Queremos generar la unión de los países, queremos colaborar.
Our virtual platform on technology foresight, Prospecta Americas, will support OAS member states in identifying and mapping future trends and technological development of critical importance for the Americas.
Este esfuerzo, el cual viene siendo apoyado por la Organización de los Estados Americanos, nos permitirá tener una gran información para poder mapear estas iniciativas de innovación y poder que ellas contribuyan al crecimiento económico, a la competitividad y al bienestar de nuestras naciones.
Como bien sabemos, nos encontramos ya en la cuarta revolución industrial, la que está cambiando rápidamente la forma en que se hace negocios, se produce, se consume y se genera bienestar y entretenimiento en el mundo. Es la mayor amenaza, tal vez la mejor oportunidad que tenemos en nuestras naciones.
The Inter-American Teacher Education Network, the I-10, is working to improve the quality of teachers with an emphasis on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education. In 2019, the I-10 launched the first STEM Teacher Fellowship of the Americas. The Energy and Climate Partnership of the Americas, ECPA, is working with governments in the Caribbean to advance electric mobility and clean transport as the sub-region pursues energy independence. Under our Integrated Water Resources Management Program, SETI is responding to the demand of member states for platforms and applications that enable data-driven policies. In the Central American region, for example, we are expanding the scope of Costa Rica's Plataforma Interactiva de Aplicación del Clima Tropical. This tool captures and disseminates real-time climate and water data, promoting resilient agriculture. The Inter-American Committee on Ports is building human and institutional capacity through public-private partnerships to address port modernization, logistics, and security. CooperaNet, SETI's multi-stakeholder platform for cooperation and partnerships, is being relaunched in 2019, responding to member states' call for a more robust hub for cooperation. In a region where 8 out of 10 consumers begin or end their shopping process online, SETI has entered into a partnership with the private sector.
Es una herramienta que sin duda acerca a las MIPYMES hacia la demanda que hoy está migrando a Internet, y con eso pretendemos mejorar las ventas y el posicionamiento de las empresas pequeñas.
As we look to the future, the Executive Secretariat for Integral Development will continue to leverage cooperation and partnerships to expand our reach, proving that together we are much more than the sum of our 34 member states.
Me and my kids have been there for over an year right now. And children are friends. It doesn't matter where they come from.
Estamos en una zona netamente selvática. La línea de adyacencia va desde el norte hasta el sur, va desde Modesto Méndez hasta Aguas Turbias, tanto en el norte como en el sur. Esta línea tiene 215 kilómetros de extensión.
De allí vino él, se buscó creo con los de la OEA y de allí vino el proyecto para acá, para Judá. Y fue que lo dieron el terreno, y lo dieron todo lo que era mano de obra y el material para hacer las casas que están ahorita. Y por ese motivo estamos aquí viviendo todavía.
La misión continúa trabajando en la implementación de medidas de fomento de la confianza mientras aguarda el resultado del reclamo que está atendiendo la Corte Internacional de Justicia por la disputa marítima, territorial e insular. Nuestra oficina en la zona de adyacencia realiza verificaciones a solicitud de ambos gobiernos, facilita reuniones y patrullajes conjuntos entre las Fuerzas Armadas y promueve una cultura de paz y cooperación entre las comunidades locales.
Children will be children. And they have harmony. They don't see each other as a different country, but they see each other that they're growing together.
Esta organización es el guardián regional en defensa de la democracia, la libertad y los derechos humanos. Los países se han comprometido con estos valores a través de instrumentos legales como la Carta Democrática Interamericana, la Convención Americana de Derechos Humanos y todas las demás convenciones interamericanas. Nuestro trabajo es mantener los más altos estándares. Debemos ser objetivos, analizar los hechos, denunciar cuando veamos corrupción, inequidad o amenazas a la libertad. En esos casos, no podemos ser neutrales.
More than 100 years since the inauguration of this building, the OAS headquarters, our institution still brings together the peoples of the Americas to address our responsibilities as a partnership of nations. As we look to the future, our work must also focus on the construction of a positive agenda that continues to favorably impact millions of lives every day.
SETI's results for 2018 proves our effectiveness as a development partner, placing people at the center of our work and leveraging partnerships and cooperation to transform policy imperatives into action. With an eye on the rapidly changing global context, SETI is innovating to constructively address the emerging challenges and opportunities for the region. As part of our competitiveness program, SETI is designing precise tools to assess assets and capabilities in the productive sector to determine paths towards higher value goods and services. As our flagship program for partnerships, the Americas Competitiveness Exchange on Innovation and Entrepreneurship, VACE, will continue to leverage good practices and the power of networks to increase trade and investment in the region.
For us, the role of the OAS is very important, connecting countries, connecting governments and private sector, and letting us know what other countries are doing it and how we can replicate that in our countries to enhance development.
For me, who has come here to look at how can we develop our own ecosystem, our own innovation hubs, our own accelerators, I think seeing this touching feeling, seeing the transformation, seeing how quickly you've made it happen, is a testament to what is possible. So I believe all of us leave here stronger than ever.
The Working Group of Experts on Subnational Competitiveness, the GTEX, is our gateway program to promote local economic competitiveness policies alongside municipal and state-level governments, together with the private sector and academia.
Este tipo de reuniones te sirven para darte cuenta de todo lo que se está viviendo en América Latina sobre los temas de competitividad. Y hoy justamente en este sector estamos viendo sobre todo los temas de innovación tecnológica, pues que si hablamos de competitividad tenemos que hablar de tecnología, y me está ayudando mucho para abrir el panorama de ver lo que están haciendo otras ciudades y lo que podemos llegar a aplicar también nosotros en México.
The hub on the transfer and commercialization of technology is connecting and strengthening national innovation ecosystems in the region. Each edition of the hub trains budding technology entrepreneurs from the region's public and private sectors to take promising products and services from idea to market.
Porque es importante que estemos juntos en esto, porque la región tiene que estar unida y me parece que hay mucho conocimiento en la región que todavía no está explotado comercialmente como podría ser, y esta es la mejor manera de hacerlo.
Tenemos la proyección de cada año generar y compartir nuevas experiencias entre aquellos que contribuyen a la innovación. Queremos cambiar el cómo lo hemos estado haciendo en Latinoamérica. Queremos generar la unión de los países, queremos colaborar.
Our virtual platform on technology foresight, Prospecta Americas, will support OAS member states in identifying and mapping future trends and technological development of critical importance for the Americas.
Este esfuerzo, el cual viene siendo apoyado por la Organización de los Estados Americanos, nos permitirá tener una gran información para poder mapear estas iniciativas de innovación y poder que ellas contribuyan al crecimiento económico, a la competitividad y al bienestar de nuestras naciones.
Como bien sabemos, nos encontramos ya en la cuarta revolución industrial, la que está cambiando rápidamente la forma en que se hace negocios, se produce, se consume y se genera bienestar y entretenimiento en el mundo. Es la mayor amenaza, tal vez la mejor oportunidad que tenemos en nuestras naciones.
The Inter-American Teacher Education Network, the I-10, is working to improve the quality of teachers with an emphasis on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education. In 2019, the I-10 launched the first STEM Teacher Fellowship of the Americas. The Energy and Climate Partnership of the Americas, ECPA, is working with governments in the Caribbean to advance electric mobility and clean transport as the sub-region pursues energy independence. Under our Integrated Water Resources Management Program, SETI is responding to the demand of member states for platforms and applications that enable data-driven policies. In the Central American region, for example, we are expanding the scope of Costa Rica's Plataforma Interactiva de Aplicación del Clima Tropical. This tool captures and disseminates real-time climate and water data, promoting resilient agriculture. The Inter-American Committee on Ports is building human and institutional capacity through public-private partnerships to address port modernization, logistics, and security. CooperaNet, SETI's multi-stakeholder platform for cooperation and partnerships, is being relaunched in 2019, responding to member states' call for a more robust hub for cooperation. In a region where 8 out of 10 consumers begin or end their shopping process online, SETI has entered into a partnership with the private sector.
Es una herramienta que sin duda acerca a las MIPYMES hacia la demanda que hoy está migrando a Internet, y con eso pretendemos mejorar las ventas y el posicionamiento de las empresas pequeñas.
As we look to the future, the Executive Secretariat for Integral Development will continue to leverage cooperation and partnerships to expand our reach, proving that together we are much more than the sum of our 34 member states.
Me and my kids have
la sesión de pruebas de audio y de video y vamos a pasar la confirmación del quórum. Pero parece que tenemos al embajador Alvarado. Rápidamente, Fernando, antes de iniciar.
Perfecto. Embajador Alvarado, si puede solicitar la palabra nuevamente. Y hacemos prueba ahí. Perfecto, gracias. Embajador, buenos días.
A todos.
Perfecto, lo vemos y lo escuchamos.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias a usted.
Presidente, conectados en este momento, habiendo hecho la prueba de sonido y de video, tenemos las siguientes delegaciones: Antigua y Barbuda, Argentina, Bahamas, Belice, Bolivia, Brasil, Canadá,
Colombia, Costa Rica, Dominica, Ecuador, El Salvador, the United States, Guatemala, Guyana, Haiti, Honduras, Jamaica, Mexico, Nicaragua, Panama, Paraguay, Peru, the Dominican Republic, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago, Uruguay, and Venezuela. We have a quorum, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. Very well. Good morning, distinguished permanent representatives and observers, delegates, Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General, and staff of the General Secretariat. Having verified the quorum by the Secretariat, I declare this regular session of the Permanent Council open. As this is the first regular session that I am coordinating as chair of the Council, I wish to reiterate the importance that the OAS holds for Uruguay as the principal political forum in the hemisphere. The truth of the matter is the international organizations, as we all know, are tremendously poignant and very relevant, and they have a privileged position in terms of bearing witness to what our reality is, and also in terms of the legal frameworks, which are fair and necessarily have to aim at defending the rights of all. We do our work well. We take actions that is in keeping with the reality as well, and we comply with what is entrusted to us. I'm a country that defends international law, and precisely we take on this intelligent position because of our geographic location. We also step forward and look at things holistically with all of the synergies and try and move things along. In the last few days, last Friday, on the weekend, we had a very important, relevant report about Haiti And this will allow us to continue thinking things through and see how can we, I should say, how we can cooperate with this very beautiful country. Looking at the newspapers, and there are a lot of things that I haven't heard for a long time about Haiti, but the truth of the matter is, I have a PS. There are topics that we have that are very relevant. They're not on the order of business, no less important, but we've called on people to look at the particular situation that is happening in Cuba. It has to do with human rights, and it's aggravating, but I think that it's very important for us to look at this. The international organizations, the Pan-American, Inter-American organizations have to be involved, and I think that's interesting. And as I say, this is not on the agenda. I have no intention of putting these items on the agenda, but it's a responsibility, and we have to have these kinds of thoughts. But the truth of the matter is, I would like to congratulate the peoples and the governments of the following member states on the recent celebration of their respective national days. Canada on July 1st, 1867, the declaration of, on behalf of various of their provinces, and then the United States, very recently, United States on July 4th, 1776, and Venezuela on the 5th of July, when they separated from the capitancy of the Spanish crown. This is the same year as Argentina, with the beginning of Tucumán and Rio de la Plata provinces moving forward on July 9th, 1973, another very important date, moving away from the UK. And this is the Bahamas on July 10th. We have the Bahamas with a lot of history of the continent. On the other note, I would also like to inform that commemorative medals have been sent to the family of our esteemed colleague, Ambassador Elisa Ruiz Diaz, permanent representative of Paraguay, who presided over our work at the helm of this council until the day of her passing, as well as to our colleague, Ambassador Sir Ronald Sanders, permanent representative of Antigua and Barbuda, who continued and led with special skill the exercise of the chairmanship in a very challenging period for the region. Thank you very much, Ambassador Sanders, for your efforts, dedication, and commitment. Dear colleagues, before proceeding, I would like to take this opportunity to respectfully urge all delegations to continue the good practice of limiting our speaking time when making comments. As chair, I will continue to be very strict with the use of time, as my predecessors have been. So the first item on the agenda will be in keeping with Article 43 of the bylaws and the rules of procedure. I submit for your consideration document CP/OD 2329/21. If there are no observations, we consider it approved according to the rules of procedure. Approved. Very well. My dear colleagues, as is always the case, I would like to welcome to the OAS and welcome the permanent representative of Bolivia, Ambassador Hector Enrique Arce Zaconeta. He presented his credentials, I understand, last week. Ambassador Arce holds a law degree from the University Mayor de San Andres and the University Boliviana, a master's degree in constitutional law and constitutional procedure, and doctoral studies in human rights, democracy, and international justice at the University of Valencia, Spain. And prior to his appointment to the OAS, Ambassador Arce was constitutional advisor to the National Senate, Vice Minister of Government Coordination of the Presidency, Judge of the Administrative Tribunal of the OAS, on 2 occasions, legal and political advisor to the constituent process of his country, Minister of Legal Defense of the State, National Deputy, President of the Committee on Constitution, Legislation on Electoral System, and President of the Chamber of Deputies, Attorney General and Minister of Justice and Institutional Transparency of the plurinational state of Bolivia. We are sure, Ambassador, that this Council and the organization will benefit from your experience and track record. Ambassador Arce, welcome. You have the floor. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Permanent Council of the Organization of American States, ambassadors, representatives of all the countries that are part of the Organization of American States, observer countries, all member states. I would like to warmly greet you from the President of the plurinational country of Bolivia on behalf of the Bolivian people and the government, and we're very honored to be part of the Organization of American States as permanent representative right here at the OAS. I say these words underscoring the commitment of the Bolivian nation with peace, democracy, and institutional organizations throughout the region. We believe in democracy. This was at the beginning of the 80s for us, and we have had a host of different governments which underscore pain in South America, but we've made a lot of sacrifices, but we were able to defend and uphold this democracy for almost 40 years. During this time, we've had a lot of moments of tension and crisis, but democracy and the institutional organizations have prevailed. Unfortunately, this same democracy for Bolivians was abruptly interrupted in 1919, and this left a scar and pain forever on the heart of the nation. But the institutional order and the rule of law was also underscored by suppression of constitutional rights and other points throughout the entirety of my country. But this institutional level of things brought hate, discrimination in Bolivia, which of course for many years has been in our Americas. 37 people dead, 871 people wounded, 1,531 people detained, thousands of people persecuted, hundreds taken away from their country, and many accused and harassed, as well as our president going to the United States of Mexico. And Bolivia has gone through a lot. Many people could only leave thanks to the sovereignty of Bolivia. With elections on the 18th of October 2020, where President Catacora got 75% of the votes and only got 28%, which was his competitor. Mr. Chairman, Ambassador, the constitutional government of Bolivia in 2019, with a clean conscience and a free spirit in keeping with the law, after a accomplice of an electoral process, trusted fully the Organization of American States and the work of the Secretary General, and signed an agreement for an electoral commission. The result, more countries then can hope for democracy and the institutions that guarantee democracy in the region. In the preliminary report published on the 10th of November 2019, a report which was not envisaged in the agreement and could never be published before being submitted to the state, established a host of different points and irregularities which looked at an assessment of the dearth of the institutions functioning in Bolivia. This generated a denunciation of the president, Saima, and this underscored the fratricide and this individual stepped down in the name of the defense of the nation and peace. As a consequence, the preliminary report and the audit opened its doors so that finally the institutions could be returned to the country with a president who looked after the procedures and the most basic parts of the Bolivian Constitution, which didn't even swear to anyone but use force, as was the case and as an official of the armed forces of the country. Outside of the realm of the Congress, and as I say, flew in the face of the rule of law, which was practically put down. In Bolivia, on the 10th of November 2019, after the preliminary report came out, the commanders of the armed forces of the state and the Bolivian police violated the general principles of non-deliberation of the institutions that represented democracy, and called on the renunciation of the constitutional president, and the very same armed forces were the ones who afterwards moved forward violently and put down thousands of people. These facts generated a backstep of more than 40 years, not just for Bolivian democracy, but for all democracies in the region. Mr. Chairman, ambassadors, representatives, many months after these facts, and irrespective of the independent reports, especially from North American universities, they showed what happened in the assessments, and according to the audits, these were defended and in this very same arena upheld vehemently by the Secretary General. Once we had a coup that went against flew in the face of the Constitution. Now this situation is in keeping with the fact that in Bolivia, the de facto government submitted itself to the rule of law, but hasn't been able to show for the entire year the least electoral favor. And in the mind of some politicians and interested people, this did not fly. And it was just used as an excuse to bring down the legitimate government of the constitutional country. Well, as we all know, in the last deliberations that we've had, with everything else, there is far-reaching cooperation, which also took place more than 40 years ago. Given all of that, Mr. Chairman, and dear esteemed colleagues and representatives that are part of the organization, I have come to represent, I've come to greet you, and I wanted to underscore that it is necessary to clarify the facts with no vindictive spirit, without wanting to harm anybody. We just would like to take into account the value of human life, which in the final analysis is the raison d'etre of all states and the purpose of this organization. The Organization of American States represents perhaps the organization that most unifies our hemisphere. We're talking about sovereign states, so that based on freedom of thought, we move together to achieve the well-being of all people through democracy, economic well-being, and solidarity. The Organization of American States should always be seen as an organization of states that works with states for the benefit of peoples in the Americas through respectful and harmonious relationship with national governments that are legally constituted. The General Secretariat and no part of the organization should be ever seen as an autonomous body taking unilateral decisions, and much less should they open up their doors to people who don't represent anybody but who continue to seek violence and destruction in our countries and on our peoples. Mr. Chairman, ambassadors, we truly appreciate your tolerance, and I would like to offer you these words to underscore the values of humanity, which are justice, which is the case of Bolivia, so that we can heal the wounds of the country that I represent, and so that never again will any country in the Americas have to suffer the tragedy that Bolivia suffered. On behalf of all of you, the will moves us toward the noble values and the spirit with which this noble organization was established, and that you represent, Mr. Chairman, and that you represent, and which today, representing my country, have been the guiding principles of a different country that woke up in this century. We are no longer silent, and we are writing a different history. I avail myself of this opportunity to greet you, and I thank you for your words. Thank you for allowing me to share my words and go back to the main idea of capturing the justice, the memories of Bolivia, so that this situation never repeats itself in any other country in the Americas. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, ambassadors. We are willing to continue to work with you and build good ties and warm relations for our peoples. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ambassador Arce. Thank you very much for your comments. And we would like to thank everybody and hear from our colleagues. I now give the floor to the coordinators of the regional groups and other delegations who wish to welcome the permanent representative of the plurinational state of Bolivia. Ambassador of Argentina has the floor. Carmen Luisa. Thank you very much. To warmly greet the representative and the ambassador of Bolivia from the plurinational state of Bolivia, Ambassador Arce. First, my greetings to Bolivia embrace you as you come into the Organization of American States. Thank you for your clarity, thank you for your honesty, and greetings for your decisions that have brought to fore the truth. And of course, especially after suffering the history that you had in Bolivia, and in addition to other factors, the sad role of the OAS report from 2019, which totally disintegrated and laid waste the credibility of this organization, not in terms of the technical preparations and the technical aspects, but because of the manipulation of what happened. Argentina and Bolivia have had a very close historical relationship in 48 hours. We celebrated, actually, the brotherly love and a day of brotherly love between Argentina and Bolivia. And we underscored the achievements as seen from Belgrano and San Martin. And at that time, no country in the region could deny its independence, but an independence that radiated throughout the entire continent. And given this brotherly love, President Fernandez accompanied for the last point the entry of the people of our dear friends from Bolivia, and worked for the return of the President Morales after a year of vicissitudes and misfortune. It's not surprising. From the very outset of our emancipation, we know that our work and other conflicts have been there, but I think that this should not be looked at askance. We believe in the sovereignty of our peoples, and nobody has to tell our peoples how they have to be in terms of how they the ambassador has been lost, points out the interpreter. We'll have to see if we can overcome this glitch and see if we can get another connection back. Yes, we're going to try to do that. Ambassador, you have the floor. We're trying to get a connection. Thank you very much. I don't know what happened, but I was just saying, just to round off my comments, that we have to pull together our interests and underscore them, but we have to look after vaccinations and vaccines for medical personnel or frontline people. But when we look at our resources in the case of Bolivia and Argentina, we have to do everything for the benefit of our peoples, not embrace the big monopolies. But before concluding, and on behalf of the Argentinian people, oftentimes suffering and this state of play, which was underscored by Ambassador Arce, we have seen things happen by other governments in our country, and the legal framework, both in Bolivia as well as in Argentina, and the other points lead me to warmly welcome the Ambassador of Bolivia. Thank you very much. Ambassador of Canada, Hugh Adsett, has the floor.
Morning, and the Secretary General and the Assistant Secretary General, and thanks for your kind words about Canada's National Day, which we celebrated recently, and hopefully next year we can have that event together in person. But a few warm words of welcome to our new friend and colleague, Ambassador Arce. On behalf of Canada, welcome to the OAS. This year happens to be a year where we're celebrating 60 years of diplomatic relations between Canada and Bolivia. So an important milestone for us. A long history of positive relations between our two countries over the past 6 decades, centering on a mutual commitment to the development of human potential, promotion of open, stable, and inclusive democratic societies, both within our own countries, but also across our shared region as well. We also are countries that share values and priorities such as the empowerment of Indigenous peoples, in particular women and girls, as well as a desire to foster broad bonds of friendship between our two peoples. Looking very much forward to continuing to work together on this partnership over the coming years, and a very warm welcome to our organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Ambassador from Guatemala, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Secretary General, and ASG, dear colleagues. I have the honor of taking the floor on behalf of the delegations of Belize, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Panama, and the Dominican Republic, member states of the Central American Integration SIC, in order to give a very warm welcome to His Excellency Ambassador Estor Enrique Sacometa as the representative of the plurinational state of Bolivia before the Organization of American States. As has been highlighted today, Ambassador Arce Sacometa has excellent academic preparation in constitutional and procedure and constitutional law, which has been clearly shown by his teaching experience. He has very broad experience in public administration, having conducted very important roles as the General Attorney of a state, Minister of Defense, Minister of Justice and Transparency, and Vice Minister of Government Coordination of the Presidency. In a multilateral way, has been the judge of the Administrative Tribunal of the OAS for 2 periods. We are sure that his professional and personal qualities will contribute greatly for the dialogue and activity of this very important political forum on behalf of the peoples of the Americas. Mr. President, with these words, we express to Ambassador Esther Enrique Arzola-Saconeta the very warm success in his new roles before this organization, in which he shall be excellently representing the very high values of the plurinational state of Bolivia. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you, Ambassador. Ambassador Luz Alenia Bañolivas of Mexico, you have the floor, please. Good morning, everyone. I hope that this connection is working perfectly. We would like to give a very warm welcome to the ambassador and wish much success when he represents his people and his government, and to rescue the memory, the truth, and the justice. Mexico will continue to be working with Bolivia in order to guarantee that the OAS fulfills the objectives which are established in the creation charter. And this is something that we should do to avoid activities which do not allow them to represent the different interests and also the motivations which have led to the member states to create this inter-American organization in order to strengthen the dialogue, democracy, and cooperation. Please count, Mr. Ambassador, with my delegation to work on topics which meet the priorities of your country, such as human rights, development, the fight against poverty, corruption, discrimination and racism, through initiatives such as the mechanism of multilateral valuation of the special mention to the electoral observation missions, of which the Inter-American Democratic Charter should be conducted in conformity with the principles and guidelines of the OAS in an objective and impartial, transparent manner, with a technical capacity which is appropriate in order to guarantee their independency and efficacy. The experience in Bolivia from 2019, which you know in first hand, is a very dark chapter which exemplifies what should not be the case, because the OAS does not have the faculty to replace the national constitutions, neither to be able to qualify the elections of no sovereign nation. The harsh experience which was experienced by your country is a very painful and extreme chapter, which you will be responsible to detail for this organization to not see this repeat itself. We are very pleased to see you alive after the tragic happenings that, as so many Bolivians, you had to take care of this. Mr. Ambassador, we celebrate with a lot of emotion that the historical tradition of Mexico's asylum has preserved your life in receiving you for 1 year in the residence of Mexico. You are very welcome, Mr. Ambassador Arce. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ambassador. Ambassador Sanders from Antigua and Barbuda, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The delegation of Antigua and Barbuda is delighted to welcome Ambassador Arce as Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Bolivia. We are pleased that Bolivia has overcome the trials it has faced, and that democracy and the rule of law have been restored, consequent upon the expression of the free will of the people in presidential and other elections. My delegation and others in the CARICOM region kept careful watch with Bolivia in recent years regarding the civil and political rights of its citizens, and especially respect for the rights of its indigenous people. We are confident, Ambassador Arce, that with your outstanding qualifications and experience, you will play a full part in the deliberations and decision-makings of this permanent council and other organs of the Organization of American States. We look forward greatly to working with you as we collectively seek solutions to the many difficulties that now confront our region, and more particularly in the interests of our people's economic development and progress. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ambassador. The floor is for the Ambassador of Panama, please. Maria Roquebert. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. ASG Secretary General, with the delegation of Panama, wishes to greet the arrival of Ambassador Hector Enrique Arce Saboneta, the permanent representative of Bolivia. This delegation bears in mind the very strong relationships of friendship which brings our peoples together, and the wishes him much success in his new role. We are sure that his bio and his experience accumulated in all the positions he has had in his country, as well as in the organization, will contribute to the effective development of all the activities which all member states have to the future of our region, more specifically for the benefit of the more vulnerable populations in these very difficult times. We hope that during his tenure in this organization, we will continue to strengthen the good bilateral relationships of our nations, working together in the efforts and the commitments from both countries to fulfill the defense of the principles which are established in the OAS Charter. Panama is fully available to join efforts with Bolivia and other member states committed to the strengthening of the organization and of democracy. Ambassador Arce, you're very welcome. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Very well. I'd like to give the floor to the Ambassador of Nicaragua, Luis Alvarado, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The delegation of Nicaragua wishes to give a very warm welcome to the Ambassador Arce and to express the availability of our delegation to work jointly in topics of interest of the Inter-American Organization. We have a very strong relationship, a friendship, a cooperation, and we hope to continue developing this also at a multilateral level. We have taken note of your very important message, and above all, of the objective of trying to establish and to bring truth for the historical memory of the facts and the important role that the electoral mechanism has taken in the audit, and with the reports of the organization and the limitations and the functions in order to precisely be able to have the coup d'etat which took place in the country. We also take note that these situations must be remembered so that they do not repeat themselves in the history affecting the democratic governments in the hemisphere. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ambassador. The Secretary General, you have the floor. Luis Alvarado, please. Mr. Chair, Ambassador Gustavo Tarre has requested the floor. He has requested the floor, please. So, Ambassador Gustavo Tarre, I hadn't seen him. Sorry, Ambassador. Dear friend Tarre, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It is not common that in a presentation of an ambassador, we start a polemic debate. The logic is to welcome the ambassador when he is joining, but the intervention of the ambassador of Bolivia present many aspects which demand a response. And obviously, I don't want to take time away from this permanent council in a detailed analysis of the many arguments which he has expressed to us. What I do believe it is very good that we bear in mind that this organization has accepted Ambassador Aparicio without greater objections, and this nomination was a result of a government which had taken power via a coup d'etat, and therefore, if that wasn't the case, he wouldn't have been presented. And during the time that Ambassador Aparicio had his functions, he did so in behalf of the people of Bolivia with responsibility and respect. I believe for many people, we believe that in Bolivia there was electoral fraud. The former president tried to continue for a fourth mandate, going against this, which was clearly expressed by the Bolivian people in a referendum, and in a manipulation of the results, which was clearly shown, first of all, by the Bolivian people, which went out to the streets to protest this manipulation, also because of the electoral mission for the observation sent by the OAS. I don't want to go into detail because this is a debate which is not to be produced, but it's important to remember that this very same mission for the same Secretary General Luis Almagro, some months later, saw recognized the election by Arce. There was fraud against the elections in Bolivia. This is a continued activity. The fact that there was a fraud and was recognized of what was taking place, and also the election of a president, Arce, those are the best proofs of the efficiency of the fact that these observation missions are very fruitful. A very important person, Simon Bolivar, used to say that Bolivia was his preferred daughter, and the links of Venezuela and Bolivia are innumerable. They go back to that time, to the high Peru, and the very strong relationship we have with the Bolivian people are not affected in any manner by the person who represent them, or have represented them, or might represent them in the future. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ambassador Tarre. The request from the floor from Ana Gabriela Vasquez from Peru, please. The floor is yours. On behalf of the mission of Peru, we would like to give a very warm welcome to Ambassador Arce, the permanent representative of the plurinational state of Bolivia, and we express our great availability to work together in all topics related to this organization, without not mentioning the very strong relationships between Peru and Bolivia. We wish much success in your purposes, Ambassador Arce. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm looking, Don Alejandro Ordóñez, Ambassador from Colombia, you have the floor. There you are. Thank you, Ambassador, please. You found me. You found me. Yes, I found you. Yes. Mr. Chair, Mr. Ambassador from Bolivia, Dr. Arce, on behalf of the Colombian mission, I would like to give you a very warm welcome to the Organization of American States as the plenipotentiary ambassador. I wish you much success. From the onset, I must warn you that I do not agree with the judgments you've done regarding the electoral mission of the Organization of American States. I am not going to go into controversial issues at this time. I believe this is something which will be developed at a different moment in different permanent council meetings. Nevertheless, I would just like to make this comment that Colombia does not agree with those observations, which undoubtedly in this very first session we must give a very warm welcome to the ambassador and to expect that you fulfill your role in the best manner possible. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Don Alejandro. The ambassador of Chile, Isacort, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, Mr. Secretary General, Mr. ASG, Mr. Ambassador Arce, I do not have your image, Ambassador. I do not have the image of Ambassador Isakort, please. I hear my camera is on. I don't know. There might be a technical glitch. You have it on, but you're dark. We cannot see you. Yes, we do not have an image of the ambassador, said technician. If you want to give me the floor later, yes, please. Thank you very much. So we also have Carlos Hativa from Ecuador, please. Carlos, the floor is yours. I would just like to greet Mr. Ambassador Arce as the permanent representative of the plurinational state of Bolivia, to wish much success and obviously to express the availability of my delegation for us to work together with the Bolivian delegation in order to enhance the objectives of the organization, which reflect and shall reflect the friendship which exists traditionally between our countries and peoples. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Carlos. Isa, can we see now, Isakort, if it's working now, please? Mr. Chair, can you hear me? Yes, we hear you, but we do not see you. But please continue. Well, Mr. Chair, Mr. Secretary General, Mr. ASG, Ambassador Arce, in a very respectful and fraternal manner, we give you a very warm welcome to the new permanent representative of Bolivia before the OAS. We hope to be able to have meetings in the future in order to work for the common values of the Americas. Thank you very much. I have a request from Aurimar Nunes, please. Please. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Mr. Secretary General, Mr. ASG. On behalf of the Brazil delegation, I have the honor of taking on as the business representative on the 2nd of July to welcome the dear colleague, Ambassador Arce, and to wish him much success in his mission. Good morning to all, and I wish you all great work. Thank you. I'm looking at the list of speakers. Now, yes. Please, Mr. Secretary General. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would like to welcome the new permanent representative of Bolivia, who is very well known by all of us. And this is something that I have to mention, which you studied in the University of Texas, Michigan, Fraxo, the European Union, Paul Newman, and the report of the Electoral Tribunal have confirmed the findings of the observation mission and the audit mission, or better said, the mission which obviously has been conducted, the analysis, the full analysis of the electoral process. And it is my obligation, obviously, to defend the work of the electoral observation missions, to defend the work of the auditors, because above all, it's those very same observers, the very same officials, the very same electoral observation department, the Secretary General, which have detected the modification in 2019, the very same which have created, strengthened, and given the guarantees for us to take on the elections in a fair electoral process, and the permanent representative may be sitting here today with us. as we expect that there are no more coup d'etat in the hemisphere, we also hope that there are no more manipulations of the will and the desire of the people expressed in elections. After the mission in Bolivia, we have had dozens of electoral observation missions. It wasn't even the first time that during my tenure we requested that an electoral process be nullified. This is an activity which has always been recognized, the technical levels recognized by the Secretary General, which never changes one letter and never induces one line of thought of the electoral observation missions and in the technical autonomy that they have. Obviously, that it might be important, these irregularities of the full analysis of the electoral process, which were conducted based on this report with manipulation of the electoral results, looking by the auditors to validate the results of the election. Literally, there was said that these were activities which had malice to transfer, to change the electoral process. And it is very important to look at this once again, because this has not been changed in terms of the statistical topics by 2 or 3 consultants, private consultants, and a think tank of ideological dimensions. The observations are very clear regarding the electoral aspects, the painful stop of the preliminary results. For 23 hours, clandestine servers manipulating the hidden servers, using technological schemes with improper results, remote access from unauthorized people to the system, providing false information in order to hide the servers, false information regarding the servers used, and the change of the scrutiny minutes. They did not preserve the metadata of the images. They didn't have the value in the software, and possibly in the future to make changes to it in the electoral process. They proved the transfer of images from the primary server, BO2, from the server for the apps, and the publisher, which was looking at the official count and changing the numbers from abroad, the databases and the technical servers from the perimeter areas, unauthorized access to the system and unexplained. They modified the official counting software in the middle of a process, about 1,500 access to the direct counting. This was directly changed to modify the database with this system. They had the clear evidence on the manipulation of the access, and the custody didn't guarantee that this is something which wasn't manipulated and staged. They had votes in abroad which were filling out this before this system. The authentication of system which was weak and allowed someone to take control of administrative control. They saw that with the same code you could also open many sessions, opening a new window in the browser before closing the prior one, and therefore you could be working in 2 different tabs, and therefore you could use this with different users without authentication. But President Morales has nullified the elections, and we show that in this process we were very close to the Secretary General. There was never in this, and even before this moment of the full analysis, there were 9-10 hours in advance in which there was no affection of the elements of the state in order to nullify the elections. The multiple nullifications in which were found, they are more detailed, obviously, in the full report of the mission and in the report of the second mission for the analysis of the full process. Once again, we ask you to read it. Once again, we ask you to look at all the annexes, even when there has been a nearly inappropriate approximation to the auditors so that they change their reports. This was reported by Bolivians, the attempt to eliminate evidence. Obviously, we see that the malice in the production of these results are against the legal aspects and the obstacles which are being shown by this duty. And this is clearly something which we must take into account. All of these irregularities which were done without having any single objective, just by the nature that it has, and it makes it clear very clear, as the report shows, that the objective was to change the results of the election. That's why the mission could not validate those results of that election. This information, these 500 pages of attachments, nearly 100 pages of the reports, have been available for 2 years, basically, 1 year and a half, for everyone to view. This is public information. This is information which has been shared with all, and you have had all this aspect even by the European Union. And finally, this secretariat, which was very close at that time to the government of President Morales and had recognized President Morales with a social dimension of his work and the dimension of his efforts for those who had been more underprivileged in Bolivia. Definitely the sympathies that existed were out there. And obviously we had personal attacks even from a physical standpoint. This is known. This is known. Therefore, when there's a distortion of this reality which is presented in this manner, this is not admissible. This is something which I continue to support, the missions of the electoral observation, which have shown their usefulness even in election processes which are ongoing at this time. They have shown their how useful they are. If they made one mistake, only one mistake, even something which was affected in this electoral process, we had bound personally for this to be conducted in the best manner possible, for the observation missions for this audit. And this report was not presented without consultation. We, those of the observation mission, must have had at least 3 requests which arrived from the Secretary General to advance the report because of a situation of a crisis the country was living. That is the reality, and this reality obviously is the facts that we can continue to talk about this, because there's much more information, obviously, of hundreds of pages and of hundreds of communications, which obviously we have always been looking at this, and we have always been open to comments. We have always been open to scrutiny, but this is something that we're never going to tolerate, that this is something which is lied to us in our faces, Mr. President, Mr. Chair. We will not accept this. Very well. I'm sorry, there's a request for the floor. The Ambassador of Bolivia has requested the floor. You're muted, Mr. Chair.
Al embajador de Bolivia, no le estaba viendo el pedido de palabra. ¿Cómo no?
Ambassador of Bolivia. Thank you very much, ambassadors. I'd like to begin by thanking each and every one of the ambassadors, representatives of various missions, who have offered their well-wishing and their welcome to this humble servant. We are more than willing to work with them hand in hand. But very especially, I'd like to thank the Ambassador of Mexico, Ambassador Baños, because she said something which is absolutely true, Mr. Chairman. If I'm here today with you, it's because the Mexican nation and its institutional government, President Obrador's government, saved my life, and President Morales continues to be their life saved. So possibly, had Mexico not participated in this long time-worn tradition that we have, it wouldn't have been that way. So in all due respect, we thank them for their approach. I would never defend or bring to fore any lies, but I have taken due note of the disqualification of the institutions and the important points made in the New York Times, and I have taken due note of everything that is in these reports. They're not 4 pages, but they come from international, high-level international institutions. And things have been done very forthrightly, absolutely on a voluntary basis. No one has made any request, nothing undue. But the fact is, it's academic, and so I'm very happy to hear your militancy, your advocacy, and your points on everything that happened in Bolivia. So, Mr. Chairman, for the defense of the institutional framework in the Americas and democracy, we have all the necessary institutions, including the Permanent Council, to analyze the situation that took place in Bolivia. To conclude then, Mr. Chairman, I really don't want to zoom in on everything. I would like to thank everyone, but I thank the Secretary General for his words, and the words based on reports that there was forward, and these are the definitive preliminary reports, but including my participation and on behalf of the 37 people who died. There are dead people, given the situation. There are unconstitutional things, and given the logic of an organization and the nature of the organization, such as the OAS, things cannot go unnoticed or with impunity. That's the position, and my position is to cooperate and to hope to have the cooperation with all countries so that this situation is clarified in the next few days, the next few weeks, and the next few months, with a view, Mr. Chairman, to underscoring the spirit with which this organization was established in defense of the institutionality and the rule of law and democracy, and for those to prevail. And never again can we have in Bolivia what happened. Never again can we have a family that would go through these things in the dark of the night. For conservative governments who are against constitutional democracy, we have to look at this. There are processes going forth in Argentina with the authorities, and we are a clean organization. We defend our peoples, and we have to move ahead with the investigation on one of the chapters, one of the darkest chapters in our history. Obviously, this is a very complicated issue, and of course, it does deserve serious investigation. Once again, I reiterate my thanks, Mr. Chairman, and we will continue to work not only on this topic, but on everything that's in the remit of our organization. Thank you very much. Secretary General, you have the floor. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, in the final analysis, it's not any militancy that undergirds the reports. The reports came from the EOM reports, and they were approved in this Permanent Council. And they were technically recognized by all the organizations that I highlighted, the EU and other organizations and universities. Now, you referred to the article in the New York Times that recognized the irregularities that we've spoken about. The article in the New York Times gives a statistical analysis that doesn't tally with the organization's view, but the issue is that the irregularities were not recognized. They were recognized by the article in the New York Times and also recognized by the various pages that you have in that report, including the CPR, is the defense and to protect the EOM, their technical aspects and the autonomy thereof, not just in terms of how the General Secretariat works or the Secretary General. It's also, with all due respect for countries, this is absolutely what is in the democratic charter and what it wants to preserve. And we're talking about their technical autonomy with regards to the pressures that might come to bear on countries. These irregularities were published and underscored in the OAS pages. These are technical reports which are absolutely definitive. Yes, we do want justice. We want justice. We want an investigation in keeping with the rule of law and democracy for all of the massacres that happened in Bolivia, all massacres, all bloodbaths, these last ones, and we'd also want justice in Bolivia for the cases of corruption, all the corruption across the board. The transitional government, as well as all of the other events. It's not amnesty for some and judgment for others, no. We're not trying to judge corruption per se from other eyes. We have to uphold the rule of law, which is everybody's responsibility. And thus, Mr. Chairman, that's what I'd like to ask for. I'd like to ask for a minute of silence, Mr. Chairman, for all the victims that the representative of Bolivia referred to that happened in the bloodbaths. If you authorize that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, of course. For all of those who lost their lives in circumstances which have been referred to here, a minute of silence.
Bien, gracias, caballeros.
Very well, thank you all. Let's move on to item 3 then. Ambassador Bolivia has asked for the floor. Very well. I'm very happy to give the floor to the Ambassador of Bolivia, but what we can't do is to end up bickering. We have to try to move ahead with the Permanent Council's deliberations as best as possible. We cannot have any ad infinitum conflict or bickering. I give the floor to the Ambassador of Bolivia, knowing that he is more than capable of summing things up, but this scenario is a discussion that can go on ad infinitum. It's not going to be fruitful. Let us move ahead. You have the floor. Thank you very much. I'm going to take up 30 seconds, given your recommendation, Mr. Chairman, and given this conflicted situation, which is grave. But let me just say, Mr. Chairman, in all due respect, without wanting to hurt anybody, it's nothing personal. I think that it's grave to have a person that defends those who defended the death of thousands of Bolivians in paying tribute, and in all due respect of those who lost their life, to those who have had changes, in all due respect to the nature of the organization, I would like to pay the highest tribute, a homage to those people for whom the Secretary General asked for a minute of silence. We have to uphold the documents. We have to hope that the organizations in other countries also carry out a definitive investigation of what has been said in the Permanent Council. And I say, I have no personal vendetta or anything like that against anybody, but Mr. Chairman, I reiterate the purpose of the existence of this August organization. That is what we're here to do. I understand references made to other points, but we're talking about the defense of life of 37,000 for whom we have paid tribute. And given their right to the truth. Once again, I apologize and thank you very much. Mr. Chairman. Secretary General, I give you the floor. 30 seconds as well. Well, yes, we're already working issues to send the ICHR mission to accept the interdisciplinary group and the independent groups in Bolivia. These were reviewed by the Secretary General. The General Secretariat is willing to make this report available to the ICC so that we know the truth of the facts. And the EOM, like other audit missions, don't invent things, they observe things. And these things were observed, and these were the things that were included in the report. There is no technical ability to invent anything. This overview could not have been invented by anybody. What technical capacity, what wherewithal they would have to invent something precisely for this election? Obvious, that is not serious. And the responsibility of those who counted the votes in Bolivia in 2019 committed irregularities, and we see that this is much more far-reaching than what has cropped up, because obviously the defense of it, or I should say the defense of it, is very hard. We don't want anything aside from these electoral processes. There are subtitles for irregularities. We don't want any of that in the hemisphere. Thank you very much. Very well. Let's move on to item 3 on our agenda, which is presentation of the annual report of the Inter-American Telecommunication Commission to the General Assembly at its 51st regular session. For consideration of the next item on the agenda, I am pleased to welcome and offer the floor to Mr. Oscar Leon, Executive Secretary of the Inter-American Telecommunication Commission, CTEL, to present the annual report of the Commission in compliance with the provisions of Article 91 of the OAS Charter and other applicable articles of the CTEL Statute and Rules of Procedure. This report is distributed to delegations as document CP/Doc 5684/21. Mr. Leon, welcome. You have the floor. Please go ahead. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, Secretary General, Assistant Secretary General, observers, permanent representatives, and other representatives. I'm very happy, as representative of CTEL, to take the floor and to speak to the activities that have taken place. I truly appreciate you giving me the floor for my presentation. I would like to remind you of the framework of our work and look at the CTEL safeguard telecommunications in the Americas region with the necessary technical support that we got, and also bearing in mind the regulatory and political frameworks for digital transformation. This was in keeping with the General Assembly and Article 53 of the Charter, and we have been working along that line. We work to do everything and expand the geographic and social coverage of ICT in the Americas, support the 4 OAS pillars, develop the strategies or the strategic initiatives of the OAS General Secretariat, and promote progress in the Americas to reach the targets. Moving on, under item 3, this shows the results of CTEL. And in 2020, CTEL did do very intense work to carry forth 54 preparation, or I should say 54 virtual meetings and roundtables with 983 participants. We had a lot of the different mechanisms that allowed us to carry out our work. And this is in spite of the pandemic. CTEL was the first regional organization that held preparation meetings for the WRC 23 successfully. We did this with all states. Once again, we had a lot of virtual meetings and roundtables with 983 participations. 1,121 documents were processed. We had 13 resolutions, 5 recommendations, and 5 decisions approved by the committees and 96 associated members as of December. Many have worked on these topics. Also from the standpoint of the expansion of telecommunications and all of the work that we did in rural areas and unserved or underserved areas, the initiatives for the expansion of telecommunication in rural areas and in underserved or unserved areas were approved. We did all of this with a view to looking at another topic, emergency telecommunications. One of the projects to provide the Emergency Operations Center to Amateur Radio Network WinLink 2000 to the network of those involved in partnership with Comtelca and the CTU and others. In slide 4, once again, we show some of the results. Telecommunication standardization was one of the points that we dealt with, and this involved preparation of the Inter-American Agreements for the World Telecommunication Standardization Assembly 2020. Here we look at the different capacities of the different participants. And here we had 2,666 scholarships which were granted to the benefit of students and participants from 31 OAS CETEL member states, as listed here. In the Internet of All Things, we also took a look at different topics: 5G, LOT, blockchain, DNS, e-health, cyber health, and all of these were taken into account by different participants. I would like to underscore some of the achievements. For the moment, we have things being looked at by the OAS Secretariat on August 20th. The virtual forum on progress of the 2030 ICT Alliance was held with the participation of high-level authorities, associate members, and bodies from the region, where the allies indicated the progress they have made with their actions to fulfill their commitments. We had 340,000 beneficiaries by training 231 some odd thousand children and adolescents, 8,444 teachers, and 100,000 some odd parents. In 2020, it was possible to achieve the connection of more than 533 schools, universities, and public institutions. These were some of the actions and achievements that were made. And it underscored a lot of innovation for schools. So we provided technological equipment, including laptops, tablets, projectors, routers to 36 primary schools in the Bahamas and St. Lucia, and supplied economic digital content and innovation and ICT integration and education, together with the 56 schools in Barbados, Belize, and Guyana. In this slide, we underscore the 2030 ICT Alliance for the Americas, with a view to connecting. We did this with Wi-Fi, internet, and we did this was an agreement that with Brazil for providing internet for Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, underscoring policies promoting access to the internet. We did this with the agreement of governments and with the resources from many different sources, so that people would have access points and be able to connect For the next generation, we aim to have service that makes it possible to have access to all of the content available on internet in a lighter version. We continue to work so that we can connect everybody, and of course this is work that has a lot of voluntary involvement. And the idea is to link up and better understand the state of play. We had 50 community networks operating. They were made to run in Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, and Brazil. Once again, according to these policies promoting access to internet. We wanted to pull in also the more far-fetched areas so that we could have better strategies. Next slide. Here we're looking at, again, Alliance for the Americas. The program intends to help provide services to 60,000 schools in Latin America and training for 20,000 teachers. This is already up and running in the light of different agreements. Some of the commitments on climate change, circular economy, education in the areas of the EAC creation, data innovation, cyber defense, cybersecurity, and cyber intelligence sector are some of the achievements that were part of the process. Form and progress of the Rural Women's Alliance was another area where we worked. Empowerment of rural women through ICT with the participation of high-level authorities was also part of our work. In conclusion, we had 8 roundtables compiled from reports of 5 main strategic actions as follows. Speeding up access to boost expansion of internet and other telecommunication coverage services, especially in areas that have no access. We wanted to support countries in terms of what they're doing and give priority to the connectivity of strategic points in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Part of the importance also is in promoting actions to foster the rational use of the internet and just make sure that we granted priority to support operation, maintenance, and rollout activities for additional communication. Some of the resolutions for the 50th OAS General Assembly led to the role of the Organization of American States in developing telecommunications with information and communication technologies through CITEL throughout the region. We had things that were looked at, and we will pick this up in the next General Assembly. Initiatives to expand telecommunications, ICT in rural, underserved, and underserved areas are other points that are looked at. And once again, initiatives to expand telecommunications and ICT in far-flung areas, in rural, underserved areas, are always looked at. In the final analysis, this is a very important topic. Looking at the system last year, we have done this with Peru and with the support and connection of the Dominican Republic as well, so that through these efforts, the 3 countries participated, and we had the best practices in the Americas with regards to connectivity and digital training. A host of different combinations of things were done. This was done with CITEL, and of course, all of this together allowed us to identify things that will be looked at the General Assembly. Now, this document is very important, and it will be presented in some of the meetings at the ITU, underscoring the efforts and the importance of what is happening in the area. The current state of play is to help all members of the OAS. This is not siloed work or separate work. It's done in 25 countries through those who approve things that day, and it was approved by some members. Once again, in the document, we underscore working with countries present, and we participate in the implementation of these initiatives and from a technical standpoint as well. So once again, thank you very much for giving me the floor on this point, and we wish you all the best of success. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation, Executive Secretary. I now give the floor to delegations wishing to speak on the report under consideration. For those who have requested the floor, Ambassador Raimundi has the floor. Argentina. Microphone and camera, please. Thank you very much. I didn't hear the chair giving me the floor. Well, very briefly then, I just wanted to thank and celebrate, applaud the presentation of this report by the Executive Secretary of CITEL and reiterate the commitment we have to continue our role as chair of the Permanent Advisory Committee of CITEL and look at 2 draft resolution projects which are a priority for the Organization of American States in developing ICT's communication as done through CITEL, and the second have to do with expansion of telecommunications and ICTs in rural areas, in unserved or underserved areas. This is a priority. We hope that we have far-reaching support at the next General Assembly. Thank you very much. Very much. Thank you very much. The Ambassador of Mexico has the floor. My delegation would like to thank the Executive Secretary of CITEL, Mr. Leon, for the annual report, for giving us an overview of all of the achievements of CITEL. Given COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, a year of great complication of all the technologies and information technologies, we have looked at strategies to deal with the health crisis, underscoring how essential it is for people in their lives. My delegation would like to express Mexico's support in this very important work being carried out by CITEL to promote coordination and modernization of all communications in the region, and supports the draft resolutions to be considered at the next General Assembly. The draft and priority area, which is development of ICT and technology through CITEL, and the initiative to expand telecommunications in rural areas, in unserved or underserved areas. Both draft resolutions underscore the basic importance of telecommunications for reaching the objectives of sustainable development, and an alliance for strengthening cooperation, participation, and a discussion amongst member states, given all of the activities of CITEL, with a view to connect everything across the board as a fundamental driving force for sustainable development. We will continue to cooperate in building an inclusive, equitable society which is fair and just by the appropriate use of ICTs, particularly during these times of the pandemic, and which will teach the right lessons for inclusive economic development, including competitiveness and access to knowledge anywhere in the region. CITEL plays a crucial role in this objective, and also in building bridges that connect all of our peoples Mexico offers its support and recognition to the work that has been done, particularly when it is carried out so sterlingly. We would like to congratulate the Executive Secretary and the entire team for all of the achievements made. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
A ver, por Honduras tiene la palabra.
Honduras has the floor, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The delegation of Honduras would like to thank the presentation of a report of CITEL regarding the year of 2020, which reflects all the activities that CITEL has for the development of the telecommunications and technologies. I emphasize the role CITEL has in the pilot project on establishing a emergency regional telecommunications network, which is alternative in Conteca, which helps the countries which benefit this activity for telecommunications for the situations of emergencies and disaster in the region of the Americas, in which my country benefited from. We value these capacitations and scholarships offered by the activity for the professional development, in which Honduras has had the opportunity of participating in executing these projects. And this is the digital aspect in the hemisphere. Thank you very much. The Ambassador of Ecuador, Hatiba, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The delegation of Ecuador thanks Mr. Oscar from the Secretary of CITEL for the presentation of the annual report of CITEL regarding last year. This document takes into account all the activities which CITEL has exercised during the pandemic in order to stop its effects and to be able to have the closing the digital divide. Therefore, this document of the technologies of information and the ICTs in the hemisphere. It's important to highlight the important role CITEL has in the initiatives of INSECTIC 2030 for the Americas. This is for the international operators. This is what we have for the scientific information and telecommunications, for the communications. In December of 2020, this center has organized the 14th International Contract of Telecommunications and ICTs in the appropriate format. This annual event is the appropriate space to present the best practices in terms of these technological advances and to present the results obtained in scientific activities and to drive public policies in the people of the Americas. And it's important to see the grants which have given forward to professional development, which has been offered by the Commission in distance training, as well as all the initiatives in order to exchange experiences between those responsible for policies in which my country has benefited from. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I have no one else requesting the floor. Don Oscar, do you want to wrap up? Please. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. There's something which I would like to mention, that these two projects which we were talking about are part of the annual report, which was distributed in all 4 languages. These are the annexes. And this summary in the first 3 pages, there's a direct link for you to be able to see the projects. Therefore, in this manner, this can be verified. And thank you very much for the floor which we have received from the ambassadors. We feel very happy with this in CITEL, and we try to work with these countries. And we will continue to try to be able to give the appropriate training for the other projects which are done by the countries which have made these requests. Thank you very much. No, we would like to thank you, Obviously, collectively, the entire body wants to congratulate you, and all the issue of telecommunications has been crucial amidst this new normality, and this is a very valuable moment which we are seeing. Frankly, this is a very, very sincere thank you. As there are no more requests for the floor, let's request the Permanent Council to take note of the report which has just been presented, the annual report presented by Don Oscar Leon, to see some of the recommendations which have been made by the member states, which were just made by Ambassador Raimundo, amongst others, and in the next regular session, according with Article 91 of the Charter. Therefore, if there are no comments or objections, this is agreed upon then. Agreed? No objections? So agreed. Thank you. Thank you very much, Don Oscar. Now let's go to item 4. Regarding the more in Suriname, regarding the general elections of May 25, 2020. This item is regarding the presentation of the report, the final report of the Electoral Observation Mission for the elections which would take place in May 25, 2020. Agree in line with the Secretary General, this is document CP/INF report 9020/21. This report, all the delegations have this as document 5714/21, which will be presented by the head of the mission, Ambassador Gonzalo Conque, the head of the cabinet of the Secretary General of the OAS, and who I greet and offer the floor. Ambassador Conque, you have the floor, please. I would like to thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving me the floor. I would like to greet all the permanent representatives and the permanent representative of Suriname and the Secretary General Luis Almagro, ASG Nestor Mendez, and all representatives, the permanent representatives, as well as all the delegates who are following us in this morning's session. Mr. Chair, I'd like to switch now to English, as this is the language in which the mission has mainly interacted with the parties. And therefore, I would like to say...
of Suriname held elections for a new 5-year term for the 51 members of the National Assembly, the 118 members of the district councils, and the 72 members of the local councils. The voters list for the elections included 383,333 registered voters in 10 electoral districts, and 17 political parties participated in the elections. Through a diplomatic note sent to Secretary General of the Organization of American States on June 2019, Suriname invited the OAS to deploy an electoral observation mission, and the Secretary General accepted the invitation on June 28, 2019 to deploy the mission. This was the 8th occasion, Mr. Chair, on which the OAS was present for an electoral process in Suriname. As the first electoral observation mission deployed in the Americas after the WHO's declaration of the COVID-19 pandemic, the mission adopted an innovative approach to ensure that it was able to effectively deliver its mandate, while taking the special circumstances into account. The mission, in this sense, employed a two-pronged observation methodology, engaging virtually with stakeholders prior to its arrival in Paramaribo, and holding in-person meetings on the ground. Of course, precautionary measures, which included the use of personal protective equipment and social distancing, were implemented for all in-person encounters. All members of the mission complied with the health measures mandated by the government of Suriname, including, of course, the necessary COVID-19 tests. In this sense, Mr. Chair, allow me to say that the OAS mission for the May 25, 2020 general elections in Suriname congratulates the electoral authorities on their successful conduct of the 2020 poll. This, as was said, was one of the first elections held in the world after the declaration of the pandemic by the WHO and the efforts of Suriname to ensure that its citizens' access to the ballot box, despite very complex challenges, are really highly commended in every sense. In its pre-electoral engagements in Suriname, the mission noted several issues of concern to stakeholders. Among them was the implementation of electoral reform in 2019, which barred the country's traditional pre-electoral coalitions from the 2020 elections onwards, and concerns about the potential for conflicts of interest where the country's elections are organized by the government. Health concerns regarding also, of course, from the COVID-19 pandemic also posed a significant challenge, as it was mentioned before. On election day, the members of the mission observed the successful conduct of the poll, including the special arrangements provided for persons in quarantine to cast their ballots. While there were a few challenges, including the delivery of incorrect ballots to several polling stations and some confusion resulting from a late decision to extend voting for 2 hours, the procedures on the day were generally well executed. The mission applauds the commendable efforts of the Surinamese authorities and all poll workers who diligently facilitated the electoral process. On June 19, 2020, the Independent Electoral Council, OKB, by its acronym in Dutch, declared the results of the National Assembly election binding. Of the 17 political parties competing in the elections, 6 won seats in the National Assembly, and 4 of those subsequently agreed to collaborate and to build a coalition. On July 13, 2020, during the first sitting of the parliament after the polls, the leader of the Progressive Reform Party, VHP, Chandrika Persat Santokhi, was elected president of Suriname. Ronnie Banswyk, the leader of the General Liberation and Development Party, ABOP, was elected vice president. In order to make the best use of the available time, Mr. Chair, I will briefly mention a few of the mission's findings and recommendations. As you mentioned, Mr. Chair, the mission's complete report has been distributed and can be consulted also on the webpage of the OAS Department of Electoral Cooperation and Observation. Let me mention some of these findings and recommendations, specifically focused on this case on the electoral system and institutions. Suriname's electoral system assigns the responsibility for organizing and managing key aspects of the electoral process to bodies that fall either within the government or whose leaders are appointed by the head of government, the president. As in previous elections, the mission noted the concern expressed by various stakeholders regarding the potential for conflicts of interest where the government organizes an election in which the ruling political party also competes. The mission recommends, therefore, creating an independent electoral body that is responsible for the organization of the elections, including the appointment of poll workers. Regarding electoral justice, Suriname's electoral law allows for complaints on some issues to be appealed to the President of Suriname, with the exception of voter registration, which may be appealed to the judiciary. While the mission was informed by the Ministry of Home Affairs that electoral stakeholders, including political parties, also have access to the courts of Suriname to seek redress for their complaints, the inclusion of the executive among the authorities that resolve electoral disputes is specific to Suriname's institutional design and unique in the hemisphere. The mission recommends, in this sense, amending the relevant legislation to entrust the resolution of electoral disputes to a specific institutional body that has judicial functions. Such a step would be aligned with several international instruments by which Suriname is bound, which recognize the human right to have an effective remedy before a competent, independent, and impartial judge or tribunal. Let me now mention some of the findings on electoral technology very briefly, saying that Suriname's electoral system is a primarily manual one, although certain processes, including the transmission and dissemination of preliminary and official election results, do employ some technological tools. In order to strengthen Suriname's results tabulation and transmission system and provide more timely results following elections, the mission recommends that the Central Polling Station, Hofsten Bureau, considers the possibility of implementing a system to collect and publish official preliminary election results for all levels of the election. utilizing the images of the statements of poll that it already collects in order to increase transparency and public confidence in the electoral outcomes. Relating to political participation of women, and I'm concluding in a few minutes, Mr. Chair, in Suriname there are no specific affirmative measures for the inclusion of women in candidate lists and in the National Assembly, as suggested in the prior electoral observation mission, the one from 2015, and in order to ensure equal representation in decision-making positions, the mission recommends implementing a gender quota mechanism in order to progressively adopt parity measures and thus level the playing field for women who seek to offer their candidacies for political office. Complementary measures to strengthen the effectiveness of such a quota, such as position mandates or alternation mechanisms, should also be considered. Let me end, Mr. Chair, by the acknowledgements. The mission thanks the government of the Republic of Suriname, particularly the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the electoral authorities, including the Ministry of Home Affairs, the Independent Electoral Council, OKB, and the Central Polling Stations, Hobson Bureau, the stakeholders with whom it met, both virtually and in person, and of course, all citizens for their kind collaboration and their willingness to engage in open and frank discussions on matters related to the 2020 electoral process. Let me also convey the thanks to the government of Suriname for its assistance in facilitating the arrival and work of the mission in Suriname, despite the logistical, health, and safety challenges deriving from the COVID-19 pandemic. And let me also convey the thanks and say that the mission is also grateful to the governments of Bolivia, Brazil, the Dominican Republic, France, Italy, the Netherlands, and the USA for their financial contributions which made the mission possible. De este modo termina el informe que estoy presentando, señor presidente. Le agradezco.
And that is the end of the report I am presenting, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ambassador Conque, for how precisely you have described your task. Ambassador Bryson, you have the floor, please. Ambassador of Suriname.
Chair of the Permanent Council, Secretary General and Assistant Secretary General of the OAS, permanent representatives, permanent observers, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by expressing my appreciation for the presentation of the final report of the Electoral Observation Mission for the general elections in Suriname held on May 25th, and the constructive engagement with the relevant national authorities in the process of the compilation of this report. On behalf of the government and the people of the Republic of Suriname, I do wish to extend our sincere thanks to the Organization of American States, particularly to the Secretary General, His Excellency Luis Almagro, the General Secretariat of the OAS, and the Department of Electoral Cooperation and Observation for the diligent endeavors to deploy an electoral observation mission to the Republic of Suriname. It would be remiss of me not to recognize the specific contributions of the Chief of the Mission for the Electoral Observation Mission to Suriname, the Chief of Staff of the Secretary General, Mr. Conque, and the countries that facilitated the deployment of this mission through their kind financial assistance, namely Bolivia, Brazil, the Dominican Republic, France, Italy, the Netherlands, and the United States of America. Chair, as just described by the Chief of Mission, my country was the first country to proceed with the organization and management of free and fair elections amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. This implicated that we had to deal with numerous challenges, including those stemming from an institutional, organizational, logistical, and physical nature. Prior to the elections, my government had issued special precautionary measures in order to enable voting in the 10 electoral districts, a high turnout of voters, while safeguarding the health and safety in the country. Let me also share with you, Chair, that our elections were observed by 25 other international observers, namely from CARICOM and representatives from 6 diplomatic representations in my country. Mr. Chair, The general elections were held in a free, fair, and transparent manner and were characterized by the peaceful conduct of the electorate during the campaigning and on the election day itself. Following the proclamation of the election results as binding on respectively June 19, 2020 and July 3, 2020, the election of the president and the vice president took place on June 29, 2020, followed by their inauguration on July 17, 2020. Mr. Chair, on the basis of the 2020 electoral report of the Independent Electoral Council and the political commitment for organizing free, fair, and transparent elections, the government of Suriname started the process of evaluation of its national elections in August 2020 through a broad-based engagement of all relevant actors in the country. While being proud to be an exemplary country for organizing its elections, the government is cognizant that certain aspects of the organization, management, and oversight of the elections need to be revisited for purposes of higher efficiency, transparency, and early consolidation of the outcome of the elections. With the firm intention to organize impeccable elections in 2025, the President has already installed a new Independent Electoral Council in September 2020. It is worth mentioning, Mr. Chair, that in light of the commitment of the government of Suriname to guarantee democracy and strong democratic institutions, the President has already commissioned a study to examine into the feasibility of an independent electoral authority for the overall organization and management of our national elections. Mr. Chair, my government has taken due note of the observations and recommendations made by the OAS Electoral Observation Mission. In general, these are considered to reflect commonalities with our own national evaluations of the electoral process. The government expresses the hope to establish a stronger collaboration with the OAS and other partners in the process of further strengthening its overall electoral organization, management, and oversight on the basis of the numerous observations and recommendations. In closing, Mr. Chair, be assured that the government of Suriname remains committed to the upholding of democratic principles, the rule of law, the strengthening of democratic institutions, and advancing good governance in order to support and safeguard overall political stability, social cohesion, harmony, and development. We reiterate our appreciation to the Chief of Mission and the entire electoral team to Suriname, as well as all the donor countries that facilitated the deployment of this mission. I thank you so much, Chair.
Real pleasure to hear this kind of and thank you, Ambassador Conque, for all your work at this mission. Paso al español.
Let me switch now to Spanish. I have no other notes here. I believe Ambassador Conque's report. I'm sorry, Ambassador. There are two requests for the floor. No, yes, I can see. If you can help me. Yes, there are two requests for the floor. Ambassador Hugh Adset, please. The floor is yours.
Bon, sur cette report, et merci beaucoup pour cette report.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, Mr. Chair. This is a very important report for Canada. Canada thanks the participation of Suriname in this activity on behalf of democracy to organize national elections as was foreseen initially during the first stages of the global pandemic of COVID-19. We would like to also congratulate the team of the electoral observation of the OAS and the head of the mission, Ambassador Conque, for his activities, his adaptability, and his capacity to innovate, which allowed him to observe successfully the elections in this very difficult circumstances. we consider this very important work of the electoral cooperation, as well as the observation of the elections, as well as a contribution which is mandatory for the common efforts in order to build a hemisphere which is more democratic. Canada continues firmly supporting the democratic principles of this hemisphere, and we make a commitment to analyze this report and to collaborate with it in order to put into practice this. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Hugh. I believe that there's a request of the floor from Antigua and Barbuda. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, the delegation of Antigua and Barbuda congratulates the Electoral Council responsible for conducting the elections in Suriname. The Council carried out the elections in a transparent manner, including by providing live television coverage of the voting and counting of ballots. It was an exemplary process which emphasized the commitment of the Council's officials to democracy and the rule of law. My delegation also acknowledges the democratic behavior of the outgoing president, Desi Bouterse, who accepted the results of the elections without protests or seeking to agitate supporters. The transition of power to a coalition government of parties went smoothly and without incident, providing an outstanding example of democracy at work, particularly respect for the will of the majority. We congratulate the people and government of Suriname, and we wish the government of President Chan Santoki well in the conduct of the affairs of Suriname. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Embajador Gonzalo Conque.
Ambassador Gonzalo Conque, you're requesting the floor.
Felicitando, señor presidente, va a ser menos de un minuto.
Yes, Mr. Chair, it's going to be less than a minute. I would just like to thank
and to once again commend the people and the government and the former government of Suriname and the electoral workers and electoral authorities for the organization of these free and fair elections, and to commend the receptivity to the observations, findings, and recommendations by the electoral observation missions that just have been mentioned by Ambassador Nirmala Badrice. Just to say thank you in that sense. And let me, si me deja, señor presidente, esto lleva 6 segundos, mencionar a los...
If you allow me, Mr. Chair, I would just like to mention the members of the mission, but they're very few. But I think in the context which was done, it's important to thank Mr. Casa, Brinda Santa Maria, Belén Brice, Luisa Ferreira, Correio Cantoral, Merin Ferreiro, Maria Fernanda Esprella Sanchez, Luis Rago, Westman James, and Adriana Gutierrez. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Chair, for that. Thank you very much, Ambassador Conque. Let me remove English here. There's no way to know all the precision with which Ambassador Conque works. And not all of you need to know this, but as I do, I want to be very clear in saying that he is one of those professionals in diplomacy which has the capacity and the talent and precision to work in all types of different terrains. Therefore, this is totally clear to see the performance and the results. So I would also like to congratulate Suriname, the government, the people of Suriname for the elections which were conducted in the country. And as the ambassador says, there's the full commitment in terms of elections and to continue taking on all the platforms in the rule of law. So I'd like to congratulate as was done, excuse me, Mr. Chair. Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Sorry to interrupt you. The Ambassador of Suriname is requesting the floor. Please, please, Ambassador.
Tiene la palabra. Adelante. Sí. Come on.
Thank you, Chair. Just again to convey my sincere appreciation again to the Secretary General, to the Chief of Mission, and to the donor countries for their sterling work. And also let me thank you for your kind remarks and also the remarks from Antigua and Barbuda. And as mentioned, we remain committed to advancing our electoral system and upholding the principles of international law and the other relevant legal instruments. Thank you so much. And well, I'm happy that we got all the positive comments on the organization of our elections. Thank you.
Sí, la verdad.
Well, yes, it's very gratifying indeed. If there are no further requests for the floor, are there? If there are no further requests for the floor, the chair suggests that we approve this and adopt it. Let's move on then with our recommendation from the working group for procedures for the Permanent Council. To approve the recommendation proposed by the working group in the form of amendments to the text of the rules of procedure of the Permanent Council in force contained in the annex to the report. To consider as presented, and we shall take note of the report of the working group to update the rules of procedure of the Permanent Council and its subsidiary organs contained in document 569721, which will be transmitted to the General Assembly in compliance with the mandate provided in Resolution 2951. To highlight and thank, I should give the floor to Carlos Sativa for the report. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm very happy to give you the report on recommendation from the working group for the rules of procedure of the Permanent Council and the revised version thereof and the subsidiary bodies on the 27th of April, and which is in document CAJPGP 2951 Rev 2, which was approved in May in the official version. I'm very happy to put this before the CAJP for consideration on the 6th of May. As chair of the working group, with a view to reviewing the rules of the Permanent Council and to maximize its work and the work of the bodies of the organization, we have to look at the different situations that require immediate responses, such as COVID-19 and its outbreak. And as such, then, the General Assembly, in its 50th session, approved 2951 from the working group, which was entrusted to looking at a review of the procedures of the Permanent Council and how it works, and including the committees, the working groups, and the other mechanisms, and to propose the corresponding recommendations that can seek to strengthen the resilience of the organization. In the observance of this resolution, the working group carried out its work and its activities between the 26th of January and the 30th of April. And in concluding its work, the working group adopted its report that has 4 different recommendations, which are very specific and to the point. First, sent the set of recommendations from the working group to the Permanent Council. Second, the legal nature that is being proposed to the Permanent Council for the draft recommendations, with a view to looking at the modifications of the text. Third, recommendation to the Permanent Council to study and introduce language when necessary in the official languages of the different versions of the regulation. And in this regard then, and for the record, we wanted to reiterate what was expressed at the last session of the working group. Inclusive language underscoring gender and follow-up of the need to use plural or singular words that represent people and the representatives that are mentioned in the report, as well as in the articles defined, which have to take into account plural or singular mentions, his or her, which is what we have in English. These changes shall be applied where appropriate in the official languages of the organization. And last, fourth recommendation, according to resolution from the General Assembly 2951, there should be a presentation of the document to apprise the General Assembly at its 51st regular session. In addition to that, the working group took into account three final considerations. One, thanking the delegation of the Dominican Republic delegation for the decision of its government to offer $3,000 so as to do the necessary things to introduce an electronic voting system in the Bolivar room. According to the working group, the work was adopted and sent to the chair of the Permanent Council at that time, our dear colleague who passed on. This was a working group report that includes in the annex the draft set of recommendations. To conclude, then, I would like to put for the record, and all member states who participated actively and constructively in the working group, to all of the team members of the Secretariat and the Permanent Council and the Secretariat of the CAJP and the Department of Legal Affairs and the interpreters and translators, a general applause. Thanks for all the work done for this exercise. Special thanks to Mr. Lima, and thanks for all of the modern updating of documents for the reports. Mr. Chairman, the Permanent Council regulation was approved 40 years ago in October 1980 and has been amended 4 times. The last legal review and reform was in 2003. Thus, we have consideration of 30 different points that were taken into account, of which I should like to underscore those approved. The system of voting that I mentioned and the tasks of the President of the Permanent Council, the inclusion of virtual formats for exceptional circumstances, the definition of limits or time limits for chair people, and the time for interventions from 10 to 5 minutes. Having said that, I would just like to say that a lot more can be done. A lot more can be done to improve things. But given the practice and reality of negotiations, things were done. Oftentimes, the best is the enemy of the good. According to consensus, this is what we have to observe. At any rate, significant achievements were made thanks to the constructive work of all the representatives of the OAS. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ambassador Jose Fiallo from the Dominican Republic has the floor. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would like to thank Ambassador Cantiva, Representative of Ecuador, for the presentation of the report and for all of the professionalism done in carrying out the work, given the achievements with a view to striking consensus so that we could fulfill and do our work. We have reflected the proposal of the working group to inform the rules and regulations. We recognize all of the efforts and the performance of all delegations who made a contribution to rolling out this work. On the points reflected in the report, we understand that this work was very difficult to make the necessary changes for the very performance and procedures of this Permanent Council and its subsidiary bodies. And to a large extent, there were a lot of challenges because of the pandemic. They were overcoming that the work was done. But once again, the majority understood and agreed that this organization had and continues to have a long-held tradition. And it's very important for the Dominican Republic to represent modernization through technology and ICTs. And the recommendation was crucial for the organization so that we can continue our work and our performance despite the recent challenges. and of the recommendation presented by the Dominican Republic. We have electronic voting updates. This is one of the recommendations that was mentioned today. And this is for the system so that the system moves on more swimmingly, is more agile, and will continue with transparency that historically records things that take place. Thus, the proposals that we have in the report and the challenges that we have today is a product of a lot of considerations and a lot of work done over months, both by delegations as well as the chair, to get the best for the system and this organization. The delegation of the Dominican Republic continues all of the achievements made very valid, as well as the work done by the CAP, so that our work and that of the Secretariat can be more efficient. Nonetheless, we reiterate our continued commitment to do the work. And we should not just have singular discussions that we've had in the past. We feel that we should have a sustainable exercise that is much more deep-seated, much more far-reaching. Given this impetus today, we will look at more significant changes in the short run. We submit our suggestions for all of the work for the Permanent Council, and with a deep-seated conversation for the OAS for its future, looking at all of its aspects, looking at the role, and look at the main actors and proposing thus mechanisms for our work, which will be much more agile, much more dynamic. Thus, we'd like to reiterate the Dominican Republic's commitment to actively participate in making the necessary agreed changes, as reported in the report. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. On the contrary. Panama has the floor, as requested. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First, let me apologize for Ambassador Roquevert for some technical glitches and has asked me to step forward. The delegation of Panama would like to recognize and thank the leadership of Ambassador Carlos Hatiwa, who chaired this working group very sterlingly and very successfully. There were valuable contributions made. The set of recommendations that were presented today look at what we have in an updated way and took advantage of all of the resources for the Permanent Council, and as such there was the necessary updating, which many parliaments and other organizations have done. And then lastly, we'd like to underscore and express at this time the full-fledged support of Panama behind all of the recommendations to have inclusive language that speaks to gender. We would like to thank you for including this gender point through and through the organization. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Ambassador Rita Colli has the floor. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My delegation would like to applaud the chair for putting this item on the agenda of this meeting. 5921 entrusted, I should say, to the group headed up by Carlos Hatiwa, permanent representative of Ecuador, was to analyze the current situation and the state of play as to the procedures and how the Permanent Council works, as well as its committees, subcommittees, and working groups and other bodies. As proposed, the set of recommendations were put aiming at strengthening the resilience of the organization. Mr. Chairman, my delegation recognizes and truly appreciates the leadership and determination demonstrated by Ambassador Hatiwa, as well as the commitment of his entire team, the Secretariat of the Permanent Council, the Secretariat of the CAJP, and the Department of International Law, who did their level best to take into account considerations put by delegations and make sure that they were included in the report included. In this regard, I should like to highlight the importance of including Articles 35B, 39B, and 31C, referring to the powers of the Permanent Council, to convene virtually or in person. And once again, when we go back to in-person meetings, we have to be prepared to unimagined work, and that technology will be our guide and our great ally so that we can move decidedly in the work we do. In this regard, then, Guatemala echoes the thanks to the delegation of the Dominican Republic, and particularly to Ambassador Jose Fiallo for the undeniable ongoing support of his government behind this organization to purchase software that will allow us to make progress in implementing an electronic voting system. We are absolutely sure that the recommendations looking at the Permanent Council and its standards will strengthen all of the Permanent Council's work, as well as all of its bodies and sub-bodies. The modernization of all of the work of the Permanent Council and its subsidiary organs have been looked at and are appreciated. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. Ambassador Navarros has the floor. Thank you very much. The delegation of Mexico would like to recognize all of the work carried out by the working group to modernize the current standards of the Permanent Council, in which my delegation participated actively. The proposals put for the PC point to the historic performance of the organization, particularly in the face of COVID-19, and thus we feel it's absolutely poignant and necessary to continue. The analysis that the working group did allowed us to detect and underscore good and bad practices that delegations have when we have Permanent Council meetings. And here it's advisable to look at this work. I would like to once again thank the Permanent Representative of Ecuador, Ambassador Carlos Játiva, for heading up the group and guiding its work, as well as Ambassador Jose Fiallo for the very generous decision taken by the Dominican Republic to finance implementation of the electronic voting system that the working group aims to establish. Thank you very much. Chile has the floor. Felipe Sainz. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First, we should like to thank the chair for having put this very important item on the agenda today, and we'd also like to thank Carlos Játiva for the report that has recommendation from the working group to update the procedures of the Permanent Council and its subsidiary organs. We are grateful to the chair of the group, Carlos Játiva. We truly appreciate the comments that were made earlier. Our country participated actively in all of the working group's deliberations, and we accepted the recommendations looking at aligning and updating the standards. On the other hand, we feel that the recommendations will allow us to have the necessary flexibility so that in our work we are more efficient and in lockstep with what we have to do in the future. In this regard, my country would like to underscore the recommendations put by the working group that will allow the Permanent Council to meet face-to-face, and then also, on the other hand, have and look at specific cases for work that is ongoing. We appreciate establishing the electronic voting system so that we can more expeditiously hear about delegations' positions. Once again, we truly appreciate that decision taken by the Dominican Republic and the work done by the Secretariat to get the software that will allow us to implement this initiative. Aware of the need to have inclusive spaces, we embrace the proposal to have inclusive language where and when necessary. We truly appreciate all states who participated in the discussions and the working group to look at the standard of the Permanent Council, its subsidiaries, with a conviction that these proposals will allow us to carry out work effectively and efficiently. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. Ambassador Adset has the floor.
A couple of comments this morning on this important item. First, let me start by thanking and commending the working group for its very important work, making very much needed revisions to the rules of procedure of the Permanent Council and of its subsidiary bodies. And in particular, can I thank Ambassador Carlos Hativa for his leadership, and because of his steady leadership, our view is very much that the working group has managed to produce a document that is much more efficient and better reflects the ever-changing, gender-inclusive, increasingly digital world that we live in. These are very helpful updates, very helpful modernizations. And let me also thank Ambassador Jose Fiallo for the Dominican Republic's important contribution as well to our ongoing efforts to continue to try to modernize the work of the organization. Mr. Chair, I want to add a few words, and I will continue in French. Le Canada
would like to look at the new rules of procedure and to ensure that the areas of the OAS are represented in the document for interpretation in all 4 languages in the OAS. Language is important not only in terms of inclusiveness, but also to be in keeping with the standards of the organization. The diversity of our region is one of our strongest pillars and should be celebrated. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I must confess I have to try and myself interpret things in the most efficient way, but I think that in principle there's an agreement. I believe there's an agreement. And that being the case, we have to take due note of the work of the working group to update the rules of procedure of the Permanent Council and its subsidiary organs contained in document CP/Doc 5697/21, which will be transmitted to the General Assembly in compliance with the mandate provided in Resolution 2951. 2. To approve the recommendations proposed by the working group in the form of amendments to the text of the rules of procedure of the Permanent Council in force, contained in the annex to the report. 3. To instruct the competent areas of the organization to introduce gender-inclusive language, when appropriate, in the official languages of the amended version of the Rules of Procedure of the Permanent Council. The additional text, if requested by delegations, to request the Secretary to distribute the revised version of the Rules of Procedure of the Permanent Council with gender-inclusive language as soon as possible for review by the Permanent Council at a future regular meeting. And 4, to highlight and thank once again the Permanent Representative of Ecuador, Ambassador Carlos Hativa, for presenting this report and for his leadership of the working group. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Basically, looking at the recommendations from Canada, if there are no objections, it is so decided. Looking at Canada's point, it is so decided. Very well, agreed then. Item 6, requests of the government of the Republic of Uzbekistan to be granted the status of permanent observer to the Organization of American States. This next item is the request of the government of the Republic of Uzbekistan for granting of permanent observer status to the Organization of American States as indicated in document CP/Doc 5712 21. To this end, I propose that this matter be referred to and considered by the Committee on Juridical and Political Affairs, so that, based on the provisions of General Assembly Resolution 50 and Permanent Council Resolution 403, it may report to this Council as soon as possible on the outcome of its deliberations and recommendations. If there are no objections, it is so decided. Is it agreed? Agreed. Very well. Let's. United States had asked for the floor. I didn't see that. I didn't see that. United States, Ed Hurtney has the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We do not object. We actually concur with Uzbekistan becoming a permanent observer, but I just had a few comments after that. I should go ahead. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. The United States welcomes Uzbekistan's application to be a status as a permanent observer to the OAS. Over the past 4 years, the government of Uzbekistan has begun to undertake significant political and economic reforms. These reforms including eliminating systematic child and forced labor, expanded religious freedoms, a more open media and civil society environment. In the economic realm, Uzbekistan is working toward opening its markets to greater private sector involvement and foreign trade and investment. Much work remains to be done, but the United States supports Uzbekistan's reforms. In parallel, Uzbekistan has sought to improve its relationship with its neighbors, including Afghanistan, and with partners throughout the world. The United States believes that Uzbekistan would benefit from the experience of the Organization of American States in promoting democracy, human rights, hemispheric security, and integral development. Therefore, the United States supports Uzbekistan's application to be permanent observer status. We look forward to Uzbekistan's future participation in the OAS system. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. At any rate, the point goes to the respective committee, and there the necessary analysis will take hold. But for now, so decided. This is a procedural matter, actually. So we'll try to do our level best. We've got 2150, April 20th, from 20th of April to the 2nd of May. We've got the minutes. If there are no further observations, we deem the aforementioned minutes approved. Let's move on to the last point. Item 8, other business. I now give the floor to delegations wishing to speak on the matters of an informative nature or whatever you might wish to express. With that, United States has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to speak at the under any other business. I would like to take this opportunity to raise the situation in Cuba. Over the weekend, tens of thousands of Cubans took to the streets to exercise their rights to assemble peacefully and express their views. The protesters called for freedom and human rights. In many instances, peaceful protesters were met with repression and violence. As President Biden stated yesterday, and I quote, "The Cuban people are bravely asserting fundamental and universal rights. Those rights, including the right of peaceful protest and the right to freely determine their own future, must be respected." Unquote. The United States stands with the Cuban people seeking freedom and respect for their human rights. Violence against peaceful protesters is abhorrent. Peaceful protesters exercising their universal human rights are not criminals, and we join partners across the hemisphere and around the world in urging the Cuban government to respect the rights of the Cuban people and to determine their own future, something they have been denied for far too long. We urge restraint, respect for the voice of the people, and the immediate release of those unjustly detained. And we ask other member states to call for the same and promote the basic principles of the Inter-American Democratic Charter for the Cuban people. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Hugh got.
Hugh, you have the floor, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I have two items that I'd like to give in an informative manner for this morning's session. As all of you are very well aware, that the vaccination in COVID-19 is the best way for us to end this pandemic. Canada recognizes the difficulties that are faced in Latin America and the Caribbean, both in terms of having access to vaccines, as well as the very high burden of mobility. Last month, President Trudeau has announced the intention of distributing vaccines through the vaccination for low income. And on some days ago, on the 12th of July, Canada has committed to donate 17.7 additional doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine through the Global Mechanism of Access to Vaccines, COVAX, and that is in agreement of the early purchase of Canada with AstraZeneca. This donation will allow the deliveries to be made to the countries of low income, even in Latin America and the Caribbean, more specifically through the mechanism of early purchases through COVAX, also for other countries of the region. Mr. Chair, this is an aspect which we would like to suggest to the Permanent Council. The other is very quickly on the success of the conference, of the International Conference of Donors and of Migrants from Venezuela. This is organized by the Canada mission last month. I would like to thank Spain and the European Union for being co-hosts of this conference, and we would also like to thank the support that we received for the preparation of this conference this year. We would also like to congratulate all the efforts and the countries of Latin America and the Caribbean that have received the immigrant refugees of member states who have participated in this. We were able to increase the visibility of the second crisis of displacement. Over 18,000 people were able to see live transmissions, and this event has allowed us to see the continuous commitment of the international community to support the refugees in high communities in the countries with greater amount of funds, 36 donors of 5 different continents, amongst them but people have committed to contributing with $2,350, $2.3 billion, of which of 1.4 billion in loans, which represent an increase regarding the contributions that were received last year. We are convinced that this will allow us to enhance the current response and also the refugees to be able to have a more positive aspect in this region. Each donor contributes based on their situation and obviously to guarantee the transparency and the accountability, and therefore Canada has established a mechanism to follow with the promises which were made in this conference, as well as to be able to monitor the commitments of 2020. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for having given me the opportunity to present this. Thank you, Hugh. I have a request of the floor by the Secretariat to have a clarification. Please excuse me, those who have requested the floor. Just for the prior point, just to make it clear that the minutes are as correct as possible. The prior topic which we approved was the report of a working group responsible for this procedure. Topic 1. Document 5697/21. Topic 2, we have approved the proposals made by the working group. In topic 3, we have seen the competent areas of the organization which are looking for an inclusive gender language in terms of the official languages, in terms of the rules of a permanent council. These are the 3 topics which the Secretariat is requesting, and this is what clearly we are approving. Do we all agree? I hope we all agree. Okay, very well. We all agree perfectly. Alejandro, Ambassador of Colombia, you have the floor, please. Alejandro Ordóñez. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. In the murder of President Moise, and with the total support of institutions and the government of Haiti, the Colombian state currently congratulates all the collaboration of the officials that this country may request in the process to find and to judicialize those who are responsible for this murder. Since the 9th of July, President Ivan Duque has communicated with the Prime Minister and has offered the support in order to be able to come to the truth on the intellectual and material authors of this crime. Likewise, the intelligence of the police, as also of the National Intelligence Directorate, to use personnel from Interpol in Colombia to join the efforts of the brother nation. Colombia cooperates with this investigation in accordance with the instructions of the judicial apparatus in Haiti, with its full independence and autonomy, and does this through its central office of Interpol, the military forces, the National Directorate of Intelligence, Migration Colombia, the Superintendents of Surveillance and Private Security, and the Information and Financial Analysis Entity, in a coordination with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In these activities, we have already exchanged 322 messages, more specifically with the Interpol office in Haiti, the Dominican Republic, United States, Ecuador, and Panama. This information makes a reference to migration registries and identification of companies and peoples. Likewise, we have processed 10,126 data, including telephone calls, CCTV images, police interviews, street and migration movements. Respected Ambassador Edmond, colleagues, I wish to be very clear that the Colombian state and its military and police forces are at the service for the institution of Haiti in the joint challenges which we are facing today, and which also include the OAS, strengthening democracy, reestablishing order, and also to guarantee justice with the coward murder of the president. I also like to make use of this opportunity, Mr. Chair, to express the Colombia is against the Venezuelan Freddy Guevara's prison, as well as the attempt to capture President Juan Guaido. Once again, Nicolás Maduro regime shows its criminal and arbitrary regime. It is once again very clear the importance that the Venezuelan people have, as well as for our entire region, that this must stop, and therefore we must conclude any type of intolerance with a dictator. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ambassador. Ambassador Gustavo Tarre, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would like to very quickly congratulating France for its National Day. The ambassador is present in the council. Congratulations to you, sir. And I'd also like to thank Canada for the report which has been presented on the International Conference of Donors on behalf of the Venezuelans, which have had to leave the country fleeing from the dictatorship. The delegation wishes to make this permanent council aware of the forced disappearance of Freddy Guevara, as well as the attempt to kidnap the president, Juan Rego, both which took place in the year 2021 in the last month. Dear colleagues, Alejandro Cones, mentioning these facts, I will try to be very brief. Around midday on Monday, Freddy Vergara's vehicle was stopped by the security forces, which had an order to arrest him. It is important that Congressman Guevara is negotiating an exit for the Venezuelan crisis in order with Noruega and with the support of the great majority of democracies. Just after this kidnapping, President was intercepted and also followed, returning to his house by the agents of the repressive forces, which entered his building and threatened the passengers of the vehicle where the president was located. According to the witnesses of President Guaido, the agents shot to the air and used these devices, and also they took the members of the vehicle arrested. The neighbors and also some other congressmen and journalists presented themselves at the home of the presidency with their presence, not allowing the situation to end in a tragedy. Hours after the kidnapping of Congressman Guevara, Saab, which is a person who is the Attorney General, said that the congressman was arrested and he was accused of terrorism, attempted act against the national constitution and treason. Obviously, no evidence has been presented for these accusations, and Congressman Guevara continues missing. We don't know where he is arrested. No his family, no his attorneys have been able to have any communication with him. Likewise, yesterday, the presidency has issued an international warning regarding the new threats by the Nicolas Maduro regime, first against the head of staff of the presidency, and secondly from members of Voluntad Popular party, accusing them of taking these activities forward. This threat has been given out yesterday in a press conference given by Roberto Rodriguez, where they announced their link between the government chaired by Ivan Duque Marquez from Colombia, the paramilitary forces in Colombia, and Ricardo Lopez, where Freddy Guevara was to continue with his plans to the cooperation and the murder of Nicolas Maduro. Rodriguez once again showed that Venezuela has no rule of law and much, even less, the guarantee of the due process and the presumption of innocence when he himself gave a ruling and issued an arrest not issued by any court or any prosecutor. We remember that last week we have arrested in an arbitrary many of the activists of the NGO Fundamedi, with Rafael Tarazona, Manuel Tarazona, and Maria Garcia and Jorge Romero, that for violations of human rights in the border between Colombia and Venezuela. Mr. Chair, while this is happening in Venezuela and Cuba, the dictatorship for 60 years by the Castro brothers and today by Hanel has once again gone against its people to quiet the protests which take place. We saw over 200 social leaders, activists, and journalists have been disappeared, and we support the Cuban people who ask for freedom and the possibility to manage their future. We remember that the Inter-American Democratic Charter, that all the peoples have right to democracy, and that the states have it's mandatory for them to guarantee these rights. Everyone that defends human rights in Cuba, we should go against the regimes in Cuba and Venezuela for totally denying the rights of their citizens. Once again, we would like to thank all the countries who have made an announcement against the disappearance of Congressman Guevara and the attempt kidnapping of a president, as well as all of those who have done this regarding what has happened and the repression which at this moment is taking place in Cuba. We call on to all of those who insist to be neutral or to be in complicity to go against and to act in a more active manner against these attacks against our people. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ambassador Tarre. The floor is now for the Ambassador of Nicaragua, Luis Alvarado. We cannot see you, Ambassador Alvarado. We see a cloud on top of you. I don't know if we can improve her image. Something is covering the camera. There it goes. Now it's working. Perfect. And your microphone is off, Ambassador. If you could please turn on your microphone. Could you please say something, Ambassador? Your microphone is still off. We cannot hear you, Ambassador. Your microphone is muted. I think the Ambassador has a problem. Could you please refresh and request the floor again, Ambassador, please? Ambassador Alvarado, there you are. Could you test now? No, you turned it on and then you muted it again. Please reconnect, please. The other item is clear, right? Nestor, is the other item clear? Is that correct? Okay, very well. The only thing I can do is to drink some mate, which I won't do in front of all of you. So let's wait a little bit more. Ambassador, while Nicaragua is connecting, but Haiti has asked for the floor. Sorry. Edmond Bashit, please, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. President, Mr. Chair, Mr. ASG, dear colleagues and all permanent observers, I would like to once again thank all the member states that have mentioned their support and who have conveyed their best wishes and condolences to the Haitian people. In light of the murder of the president, I would like to use this opportunity in order to greet the Colombian government's will to work very closely with the national police in Haiti and the judicial authorities in Haiti in order to be able to continue seeking for the truth and to place some light on this murder, which is a truly sad moment. We'd also like to thank the United States government on behalf of the Haitian people that was able to send experts from different U.S. institutions in order to conduct the investigations. And I believe that this cooperation between these states that are today in the Haitian territory will be able to greatly contribute to all in order for us to see advances in all these investigation activities. And we hope that this cooperation undoubtedly may contribute for the clarification of the murder of the chief of state. Once again, I believe that I would like to make use of this opportunity to remind my dear colleagues from the OAS as well as the permanent representatives and the ASG that despite this murder, this is a very bad issue and a very sad fact. Haiti is going to continue moving forward with its elections because we believe in democracy. Democracy alone may guarantee that our country continues to be democratic. And only with elections are we able to make sure that we are able to renew the political positions. And that's why, once again, we count on the unique support not only from the OAS as well as from the member states. Once again, I would like to thank you very much, and I would also like to use this opportunity to state that we'd like to give very warm welcome to the new ambassador, the permanent representative of Bolivia, and I'd give you a very warm welcome, and I wish you much success in your activities. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I obviously would also have to, at this opportunity, which is so historical for the French people, and I would like to greet them for the day which there's the permanent observer of France, Madame Blash, and I would also like to greet that I hope they have a very nice holiday, not only you yourself, Madam, but all the people in France. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Ambassador, I forgot the celebrants of the celebration of 14th of July. I can't obviously sing the Marseillaise, but obviously I will not do that. I can sing it all, but I won't do that. Ambassador Alvarado, the floor is yours, please. Ambassador, unfortunately, we do not hear you.
Cuando yo era chico, en mi colegio.
When I was a kid in my school talking about the Marseillaise, we had to sing it in all breaks. So this is just a funny story that I have it in my memory from day to night. And this is possibly one of the nicest songs one can sing. It is difficult and it has nothing to do with the country. The country is beautiful. It is a song which is very, very important. I remember it from my childhood. Just to make it happier this moment we're waiting. Is Alvarado coming back to Earth, or are you still flying around? Please, Ambassador, please, let's see if we can reconnect. Otherwise, we're going to think it's something that I have premeditated. Could we make sure we can fix this, please? Ambassador, could you please turn on your microphone and your camera? No, there are issues. The image was working just a second ago. Yes, Mr. Chair, the camera is working, but microphone. We are designing a technician to contact him right now to see if we can solve this problem. Let's give it another minute or two, and let's all bear with this situation. Let's see now. We can see you. I don't know if we can hear you. No, Ambassador, we cannot hear you. You are muted. Ambassador, if you can hear me, can you please disconnect your earphones, because we could hear your microphone before in the interventions you've made. the ambassador that the software that Ambassador Fialli will have, will it solve this issue? Not only the votes, but will it give us more technical activity? The software is not the problem. Sometimes it's just connection issues. The internet, yes, obviously. I think there's a change in the computer. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I hope you can hear me now. Yes, I can. I thank you all for the kindness of the patience and given to me and waiting for me to be able to connect. I'm going to read two official documents of the governments of Nicaragua of reconciliation, and the first is of the 13th of July of 2021 to Emmanuel Macron, the President of the French Republic. Dear Mr. President, in the name of the public and the reconciliation and national unity of the Republic of Nicaragua, in our own behalf, allow us to express our very sincere congratulations in celebrating the 222nd anniversary of the Bastille. This historical date, in 1889, the French people, in a revolutionary moment, started the fight against monarchic despotism and the right to freedom, equality, social justice, and fraternity. In recognition of the important contributions of the French Revolution, of the equality of the peoples of the world, we wish our best moments of peace, development, and prosperity for the noble people of France, as well as our commitment to continue strengthening the friendship links, solidarity, and mutual cooperation on the basis of a respect of sovereignty, independence, and self-determination. Received from Nicaragua our always free, fraternal greeting for our brothers and sisters in France. The President of the Republic, Rosario Murillo, Vice President of the Republic. And the second is of the 12th of July 2021 to Miguel Díaz-Canel, the President of Cuba, and it says the following: Dear Cuban people, seeing the images of us, a very well known of imperialist, that the free people that know how to defend our sovereignty and rights that we have lived and faced and overcome, we can state categorically with the unbeaten forces of our culture that they won't and haven't been able to reach all our humor, all of our commitment on the equality and revolutionary of solidarity, resting assured that Cuba will continue to be free, sovereign, and independent, because it always continues to fighting in this way and has been able to show the historical heroism of our battles and triumphs. The United States, the main destabilizer, and the planet has no moral authority to say anything exactly when it has all the responsibility and blame for all the hate crimes that have been committed and continue to commit against the peoples of the world. Reporting and condemning the sanction and the permanent aggressions that we fight together for, resting assured that we will be moving forward, because this is a moment for the victory of the people. The rights of the people are respected. Cuba, always sovereign. We fight against the Yankees, the enemy of humanity. The President of the Republic of Nicaragua, Rosario Murillo, the Vice President of the Republic of Nicaragua. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And thank you to all.
Está en mute, Presidente.
Sí, estaba en mute.
You are muted, Mr. Chair. No, I have no more requests for the floor. So thank you very much. This was a great day, and we'll see each other a few more days. This is the end of our session. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.